Okay, today we are going to be taking a look at the solo and some of the chord progression from the Beatles, Can't Buy Me Love. And I don't have a backing track for this one, so I'm just going to play along with the original from Hard Day's Night, which in some ways is kind of appropriate since there are already two guitar solo tracks on the original recording. George apparently recorded one when they did the original session in Paris and then overdubbed a second solo back in London. And if you listen closely, you can hear the original solo in the background. I'm going to be showing you, of course, the second solo, the one that's more prominent in the mix. So I'm just going to play along with that at regular speed, and then I will break it down for you. Here we go. Wanted to do an early Beatles solo to feature this Gretsch Pro Jet that I just picked up used for a song. It's of the Made in China Electromatic Gretsch series, and I have to say that I'm stunned by the quality of this guitar. Again, you can pick these up for $350 all the time, and granted, this previous owner had done a lot of work. He put a Made in USA Bigsby B7 on here, upgraded with a GFS New York 3 mini humbucker and the bridge, and a GFS New York 2 fat single coil in the neck. But otherwise, this thing is bone stock, and you know, just in terms of the playability, the neck, the tuners, thing stays in tune with the Bigsby, with the stock tuners. It's a nice weight. It balances really well. The binding, the finish work, all really impressive for what is normally thought of as a cheap budget import guitar. So check the Electromatics out. With the Can't Buy Me Love solo, it's very simple, and one of the things I like about it is, again, it follows up on what we've been talking about in other lessons in terms of mixing up the two different types of soloing from the pentatonic scales and from the movable chord shapes and parts of chords. So it is in the key of C, and it's a really, the solo is a 1-4-5 in the key of C. And so George mixes up some C minor pentatonic licks with some chord shape, sort of more rockabilly style licks. Chord progression is kind of fun because you can play it with an alternating bass with that seventh shape, and this is a really common thing in rockabilly kind of style. So you're starting, of course, on your 1, your C7. All I'm doing is alternating the C with the G. Go up to your F7, same thing. Back to the 1. 5, G7. Much for money. So play around with that. So the beginning of the solo starts off at the first position, C minor pentatonic, which would be at the 8th fret. I have seen some people play those first 3 notes in that first part at the 5th, 4th, and 6th fret. But I believe that George is playing it up here. So it couldn't be simpler. The only challenging part is getting your bends just right and getting the vibrato just right, which I clearly have not done because I'm not George Harrison. But I am running 11s on this guitar. It's the way it came set up. And I do find with the 11s it's a little easier to control the bends. Of course, you can't get as big of a bend, but that's not the point of this solo. So we're starting off at the 10th fret, 4th string on the root note, the C. And we're just going up on the 3rd string to the 8th and 10th frets and bending the 10th fret note, which is the 4. You can bend down or up. I think most people bend up. I personally have a little easier time bending down. But whatever the case, that's what you're playing. So bend and release. Could be easier. And then the next time, and that's just walking down the C minor pentatonic scale, landing on the 6th fret, 5th string, and then you're going to go into an F9 chord. Probably not playing the whole thing. Those top strings don't really ring out. You want the meat. I have seen some people play it or tabbed as an F7. And so you need to know both of those chord shapes. I talked about that movable C7 shape in the last lesson. So if we're bringing it up here to the 6th fret, the root note, 5th string root F, which is of course doubled on the 2nd string. That's your F7. And if you see these 3 notes here, those are exactly the same 3 notes on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string that you'd play with an F9. Which is played by fingering it this way and then laying your ring finger down, barring the first 3 strings. So if you hit those 3 strings 5, 4, 3, it's going to sound exactly the same whether you're playing a F7 or an F9. I believe it's an F9 chord, but I've seen people even play an F7 down here at the 1st position. But that chord shape, again, really important chord shape to know for blues especially, but virtually all genres. You want to play an F9 chord like that. I gave the first one just the slightest little wiggle. I don't think George really played with the whammy bar too much. From what I understand, he didn't really use it, you know, on his Country Gentleman, especially in the studio. Some people say he used the whammy bar a little bit live, but you can give that a little shimmer if you have the inclination, and then it goes back to the. So, you know, 90% of the solo, at the beginning anyway, is just bending that 4 note in the C minor pentatonic scale. Second time he kind of cuts it short a little bit like that. So when it goes to the G, to the 5, we're actually going to be here. The 3rd fret where our G major chord is, and George is just going to play a little slide up to that position, part of a chord shape, part of that G major chord, just on the 4th and 3rd strings. He's going to start at the 2nd and 3rd fret with that shape, which would be an F chord, right, and go. Of course, the chord progression goes from G7 to F7. So all he's doing is going from a G chord to an F chord, playing the root and the 3rd. Okay. And then the last little lick reverts back to our C minor pentatonic. So again, if you know all your pentatonic shapes, that's where your C minor pentatonic scale would be there. And then in the first position. So that's sort of where it goes. It goes. And that's just a lick straight out of the C minor pentatonic. So again. When he slides up there to the 5th fret on the 4th string, make sure you realize you're not playing the 4th fret 3rd string, you're playing this like a G chord, because now we're back over the C. You're playing the 3rd fret, again out of that C minor pentatonic. So, ending on the root note, the C. So very simple, tidy little solo. The only difficult part again is playing it up to speed, getting that bend and that vibrato just right. Alright, thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.